Slide two.
Okay. So how do you determine City of Los Angeles versus LA County? Basically, if LAPD patrols your neighborhood or your LADWP is your provider, you can also check with the City of Los Angeles hotline, LAHD hotline, or 311. So the rent stabilization ordinance or just cause eviction ordinance. Slide four. The City of Los Angeles rent stabilization ordinance under the City of Los Angeles Municipal Code has 650,000 rental units covered under the RSO and 390,000 rental units covered under just cause ordinance. Slide five. Let's see, you can go to know whether your property is under the RSO or the just cause ordinance. You can go to zemis.lacity.org, or you can text RSO to 855-880-7368 and enter your address, and they'll notify you. Slide six. Registration. So currently the registration fees for RSO unit is $38.75 per RSO unit, and it's $31.05 per JCO unit. The SCEP fee is $67.94 per rental unit. And once the fees are paid by the landlord, 50% of these fees can be passed through to the tenants and only collected on a monthly basis, only for RSO units. Landlords must provide the tenant a written 30-day notice in advance before collecting the fees. Basically, it comes out to $1.61 a month for the RSO fee and $2.83 a month for the SCEP fee, totaling $4.44. See, next slide. Let's see. So the annual registration includes the payment and fee submission of a rental unit. You can submit it at housingbill.lacity.org or registerlarent.org. Also, once you pay the registration fees and you submit your rent registry letter, you'll receive a certificate which must be posted on the property. Next slide. Posted notices on property. So RSO and JCO renter protection notices. Landlords of residential properties to provide a summary of renters' rights for tenancies that commenced or were renewed on or after January 27, 2023. This notice must also be posted in an accessible common area on the property. So that would be your renters protection notices and your registration certificate. Next slide. A registration statement certificate is given to a landlord once the registration fees have been paid and the rent registry has been completed. This also must be posted on the property. Registration certificate copy must be given to the tenant. Registration certificate copy must be given to the tenant or posted in a conspicuous location. Either or. The right to counsel, also known as eviction defense program, provides qualifying tenants with access to legal representation in eviction and administrative proceedings that may result in the termination of the tenant's tenancy or rental housing subsidy. For tenants, if you receive LA Superior Court documents known as unlawful detainer, you must respond to the court within 10 days For legal assistance, you can contact stayhousedla.org or call 888-694-0040. For landlords, effective August 20th, 2025, landlords are required to provide a notice of right to counsel at the beginning of a tenancy in the tenant's primary language. Attach a notice of right to counsel to a copy of any eviction notice served on the tenant. Attach a notice of right to counsel to any notice of termination of rental housing subsidy, Section 8. Attach a notice of right to counsel to any Section 8 administrative proceeding correspondence that may result in termination of the tenant's rental housing subsidy. Post a notice of right to counsel in a conspicuous common area of the residential building where the tenant resides. Next slide. Two types of rent increases: approval not required, LAHD approval required. RSO rent increases surcharges that do not require LAHD approval. Vacancy decontrolled when the unit is vacant. Annual allowable rent increases once a year. Additional tenant rent increases. Pass-through of installation costs for smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. JCO does not cover rent increases. Next slide. Vacancy decontrolled. May charge market rate if tenant moves out voluntarily, evicted for non-payment, lease violation, tenant habitability plan, compliance with city attorney order. Condos pre-1996, tenants are protected by full rent control. Post-1996, tenants are subject to registration and eviction protections only. Next slide. So the rent increase right now from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026 is at 3%. RSO properties, the landlord can charge an additional 1% for gas and an additional 1% for electric service if the landlord is paying the tenant's gas and electric utility for their unit. Let's see, RSO annual rent increases are allowed only once every 12 months. And the rent increases were prohibited from March 2020 to January 2023. Actually, that should be January 2024. Say a written 30-day notice is required for rent increases 10% or less. Security deposits may be increased by the same percentage as the annual percentage increase. May be imposed only if 12 months or more since last increase. Next slide. RSO security deposit interest, currently 4.32%. Interest payable can be determined two ways. Use the simple interest rate as listed above. Pay the actual amount earned on the security deposit. Landlords must provide the tenant with a copy of a bank statement indicating the earned interest for the years. RSO properties only. Interest required if a security deposit held for at least 1 year. Interest can be paid monthly or on a yearly basis, depending on what the landlord chooses. Interest can be payable as a payment or rent credit. Upon the end of tenancy, the landlord must include all accumulated interest in the same manner as when the security deposit is returned. Next slide. 10% increase allowed for each additional tenant in units. No increase for the first minor dependent child added to tenancy. Notify tenant within written notice within 60 days of actual or constructive knowledge of additional tenancy. Next slide. Smoke, also this is still continuing rent increases that are approval not required. Smoke and carbon monoxide detector installation required by law. Rate of monthly surcharge is $3 per detector. Requires written notice within 2 months of installation. You can also check the rent adjustment commission regulation 340.00 for more information. And these are for RSO units only, not JCO. Next slide. So these are rent increases where the approval is required. There are 6 rent adjustment programs: capital improvement program, primary renovation program, seismic retrofit program, rehabilitation work program, just and reasonable rent increase, and luxury exemption program. To learn more about these programs, please visit housing.lacity.org and search cost recovery programs. Next slide. 2 types of evictions: at fault, not at fault. RSO and JC evictions at fault: non-payment of rent, lease violation, nuisance, drugs and gangs, illegal purpose, failure to renew a like lease, denial of access, subtenant not approved, failure to relocate per tenant habitability plan. Applies only to the RSO units. Next slide. Continuing on, owner, family, manager occupancy, demolition, permit removal from rental market, permanent removal from rental market, LS eviction, government ordered eviction, convert to affordable housing, convert residential hotel to another use, and HUD foreclosure. All not at fault evictions require declarations to be submitted to the housing department and the payment of relocation assistance to tenants. Next slide. So RSO and JCO requirements for legal evictions: may only evict for a legal reason under the RSO and JCO. For no fault evictions, must file landlord declaration of intent to evict with the housing department. Give tenant 30, 60, 90, 100-day, or 6-month notice per state law. Pay relocation assistance for no fault evictions. Next slide. Relocation assistance. RSO and JCO relocation amounts. A qualified tenant is a tenant who, on the date of service of the written notice of termination, is 62 years of age or older, handicapped or disabled, or who has 1 or more minor dependent children. A tenant that is not considered a qualified tenant is an eligible tenant. A low-income tenant is a tenant whose household income is 80% or less of the area median income. Mom and pop. Relocation assistance applies only for evictions for landlord family occupancy or resident manager occupancy. A mom and pop landlord owns no more than 4 or fewer rental units in a single family home on a separate lot in the city of Los Angeles. Low-income tenants displaced by demolition for new construction may receive higher relocation assistance. So relocation assistance effective July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. If you're eligible, tenant with less than 3 years is $10,650,000. Qualified tenant with less than 3 years, $22,450. Tenant with length of tenancy 3 or more years or low income at or below 80% of the median income is $13,950 for eligible, $26,550 for qualified. Tenants renting units in a mom and pop property, only for owner family occupancy eviction, $10,200 for eligible, $20,600 for qualified. And for single family dwelling owned by natural person, and this is JCO only, 1 month's rent for eligible, 1 month's rent for qualified. Next slide. Tenant buyout notification program. Next slide. So RSO buyout agreements. A buyout agreement is a written agreement where a landlord pays a tenant money or other consideration to voluntarily move out of the unit. Tenants are not required to accept buyout agreement. Tenants must receive the RSO disclosure notice before signing an agreement. Tenants may rescind agreements within 30 days or any time if requirements are not met. Form an agreement must be filed with the housing department within 60 days. Next slide. Tenant anti-harassment ordinance. Next slide. So the tenant anti-harassment ordinance protections apply to all residential units in the city of Los Angeles. Tenant harassment is defined as the landlord's knowing and willful course of conduct directed at a tenant that seriously alarms or annoys the tenant and serves no legitimate purpose. Landlords are prohibited from doing the following acts if done to harass the tenants. Taking away services provided in the lease, refusing to do required repairs, entering the apartments without proper notice, threatening a tenant with physical harm, coercing the tenant to move out with offers of payments, using lies and intimidations intended to make a tenant move out, threatening or servicing an eviction notice based on false reasons, interfering with the tenant's rights to privacy, intentionally disturbing a tenant's peace and quiet, refusing to accept rent payments, inquiring the immigration or citizenship status of a tenant, threatening to disclose immigration, citizenship status, information about a tenant, threatening to disclose tenant information to a government agency to influence a tenant to move out, engaging in activity prohibited by federal, state, or local housing anti-discrimination laws, threatening, interfering with tenant organizing activities, tenant associations, and unit. It is important for tenants to keep records by taking notes of each harassing event. Tenants should keep a log with dates and times, get statements from neighbors, and take pictures. If tenant feels that they are in physical danger, call the police department. Next slide. Continuing to strengthen the ordinance, the Los Angeles City Council amended the tenant anti-harassment ordinance effective December 29th, 2024, to enhance the tenant protections to include mandatory damages for the prevailing party in a civil action, among other modifications. Redefinition of harassment. Harassment definition updated to include bad faith conduct by landlords. Bad faith defined as willful, reckless, or grossly negligent conduct. Aims to make it easier for tenants to prove harassment. Mandatory damages and penalties. Treble damages awarded to winning tenants include compensation for mental and emotional distress, minimal civil penalty of $2,000 per violation. Proposed increase of penalty to $10,000 per violation was discussed. Attorney fees must be awarded to tenants who win in courts. Prohibited act of harassment. Landlord prohibited from various acts, including taking away lease services, failing to make timely repairs, abusing access to tenant units, threatening physical harm, coercing tenants to move out, misrepresenting eviction reasons, interfering with tenant privacy rights, changing tenancy terms unilaterally, and prohibition on inquiring about tenants' criminal histories. I just can't get that word right. Next slide. Evictions for non-payment of rent. Landlords may not evict a tenant who falls behind on rent unless the tenant owes an amount higher than the fair market rent. The fair market depends on the bedroom size of the rental unit. For example, if the tenant rents a one-bedroom unit, the landlord cannot evict the tenant if the total rent owed is less than the fair market rent for a one-bedroom unit, less than $2,006. Notice to terminate based on non-payment of rent must include the number of bedrooms. So there's the graph for economic threshold, fair market rent per bedroom size. Required for RSO and JCO properties. The charts are available, housing.lacity.gov, renter protections. It'll also be on the renter's protection sheets that should be posted on your property. Next slide. Economic displacement. Economic displacement, more than 8% rent increases. Tenants who receive a rent increase of more than 8% from August 1st, 2025 to July 31st, 2026 within 12 months and are unable to afford the rent increase have the option to receive relocation assistance to move out of the rental unit instead. The relocation amount is based on the size of the bedroom in the rental unit. Relocation assistance for tenants who rent a single family dwelling is 1 month's rent if the landlord is a natural person who owns no more than 4 residential units in a single family dwelling on a separate lot in the city of Los Angeles. Once again, these charts are also on a renter's protection sheet that will be posted or provided to you by your landlord. Next slide. Filing eviction notice. So notice to terminate tenancy eviction filing. Any written notice terminating a tenancy must be filed with the Los Angeles Housing Department within 3 business days of service on the tenant. Per the Los Angeles Municipal Code section 151.09, and eviction notice to be filed at housing.lacity.org/eviction-notices. This is for the landlords to file, not for the tenants to file. Notices to terminate based on non-payment of rent must include the number of bedrooms. A landlord's failure to file a copy with the Los Angeles Housing Department is an affirmative defense to an unlawful detainer. To find out if a notice was filed, visit lahd.service-now.com/PLU. No fault eviction. For no fault evictions, this filing requirement is in addition to the requirement to file a declaration of intent to evict with the housing department. Next slide. How to contact housing department. Submit questions 24/7 at housing.lacity.org/ask-housing. Report RSO violations by calling the housing hotline at 866-557-7368 or online at housing.lacity.org/residents/file-a-complaint. For the City of Los Angeles residents, visit landlord and tenant updates at housing2.lacity.org/rent-protections-2. Next slide. The Housing Department General Hotline is the same as a regular hotline, 866-557-RENT, which is 7368. RSVP for workshops, you call the same hotline number. Stay in the know, sign up for electronic newsletters, housing.lacity.org/about-us/subscriber-to-newsletter. Next slide.